And thank you for joining us at Secular AZ today. We are a 501c3 organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state for over a decade. We have some great programming, including a series of candidate forums that happen Wednesday evenings at 6. We didn't have anything this past Wednesday. We were all kind of tied up with other engagements, but next Wednesday, we have a forum of school board candidates from the Catalina Foothills Unified School District. This will be the last in our school board forums, and then we're going to transition over into statewide forums. Next Friday, during our speaker series, we have Dr. William Horn to discuss the Christian nationalism, or discussing Christian nationalism as the new Jim Crow. And we will be hosting a candidate forum for the state superintendent race on September 28th, 2022. There are so many more, as you can see. Thank you, Lindsay, for putting it up on the screen. But if there is someone that you'd like to hear from, or if you have personal connections to prominent freethinkers or people who speak about issues regarding the separation of church and state, by all means, connect them with us. Reach out at info@secularaz.org. Today, though, I'm really excited about our speaker. Meg O'Connor is an award-winning reporter for The Appeal, which is a worker-led publication that covers the criminal legal system. She mostly writes about police and prosecutors, and she runs The Appeal's weekly newsletter. She previously worked for the Phoenix New Times and the Miami New Times, where her work drew national scrutiny to local police departments and led to the firing of 5 officers who had committed egregious misconduct. On 2 occasions, her reporting has caused some of the biggest police departments in the country to change internal policies. Her work has also been published by Vice, CNN, the Houston Press, and Gotham Gazette. So welcome, Meg, and thanks for joining us. If there's anything I left out of your bio, please feel free to fill in any blanks.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so with that, we will let you take it away. Please go ahead and tell the people about the work that you've been doing.
Sure. So I am here today to talk about abortion and the criminal legal system. So as you all know, the Supreme Court overturning Roe a few months ago has led to some serious consequences across the country, and it's going to thrust many more people into the criminal legal system. A lot of my reporting lately focuses on Arizona and what's going to happen there. There's been a lot of confusion and misinformation on that, but I thought I'd start out talking generally about abortion and policing, and then go into specifics about Arizona. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe, it opened the door to many states severely restricting and criminalizing abortion in this country. Most abortions are now banned in at least 14 states, and more states are likely to pass bans in the coming months and years. Most of these bans target providers, most of them criminalize providers specifically, but not all. There are some bans that also criminalize people who obtain abortions. And that's more likely to come in the kind of coming years. The more palatable thing to pass when this starts is to criminalize providers, not people who need abortions. But that is sure to come because, as we've seen, many people have already been criminalized for their pregnancy outcomes, even when Roe was in place. So an analysis by the National Advocates for Pregnant Women found that which is an organization that defends people's reproductive rights, and specifically helps people who are criminalized for their reproductive choices. So they found that over 1,700 people were criminalized for their pregnancy outcomes between 1973 and 2020, which was when Roe was still in place. And how that happens is that prosecutors will use various charges against people who have had stillbirths or miscarriages. They will use charges like child abuse, murder, manslaughter, drug use, improper disposal of fetal remains, and misuse of a corpse to target people who have lost pregnancies that way. So what we can expect to see with Roe being overturned is that while many of these bans don't currently specifically target people who have obtained abortions, a creative prosecutor can charge anyone any way they want, and police and prosecutors will be the ones enforcing these laws, and it's sure to thrust many more people into the criminal legal system. So what it means for people is that many people will be forced to have children against their will. One of the big issues with the states that will ban abortion or have banned abortion is that it's a lot of the southern part of the United States. It's a big contiguous block of states, which makes it, before that, people could just travel to their neighboring state where it was legal and obtain an abortion. But if you're have to go through 3, 4, 5 states, you're going to have to travel a really, really long distance. And the cost, when you need to travel that far to get an abortion, you're going to need to take time off. Most people who get abortions are already parents. So that means arranging childcare as well. You probably need to arrange lodging, and all of these costs can add up, not to mention that the abortion itself can be between a few hundred to even thousands of dollars if you're later in your term. So these costs can be very prohibitive for people. It is going to mean that people aren't able to obtain abortions at all. And also even where abortion is legal, this demand will increase from the states where it isn't, which will create longer wait times. And abortion is a very time-sensitive procedure. The longer people have to wait, both locals and travelers, the more expensive the procedure gets, and you could even get pushed out of the window of legality in that state if you have to wait too long. So the bottom line with all of this is, it is, of course, like anything that criminalizes people, it's going to affect marginalized communities the most. People of color, LGBTQ people, undocumented people, poor people, people who live in rural areas. They have already struggled to access abortions, even when Roe was in place. As we know, people of color are incarcerated at higher rates than white people. Maternal mortality rates are worse for women of color. And people will be, I'm laughing because it's terrible. I'm not sure why that's my response, but people will be forced to have children against their will in a country with no paternal leave, no healthcare, and no guaranteed childcare. So it's all very bleak, but there are things that you can do, supporting abortion funds and independent clinics, knowing there is a big network, like a kind of all the services that people could need in between. So there's dedicated hotlines to help people self-manage abortion. There's this organization called If, How, When has a legal helpline for people who have legal questions about how they might go about obtaining an abortion. And so there are just a lot of resources out there, and familiarizing yourself with the resources, supporting abortion funds is the best way, and paying attention to politics. There are some big elections in Arizona this year that will have a huge impact on abortion in the state, are some of the best things to do. So I'm going to pause here, and then I can go into Arizona specifically. It's been very messy with a huge decision coming next month. Or, oh my gosh, that's in 3 days, not next month.
Right. I feel like this whole year really has kind of flown by. I can't believe that it's already September, but honestly, election day can't come soon enough. Let's see, I think we're at day 52 more days until the election, because all this waiting and uncertainty is, I feel like we're all, not just due to the overturning of Roe, but just over the last 6 years or so, I think there's this collective kind of anxiety over the current state, the divisive nature of politics in general, the rise of Christian nationalism and fascism, really, and then a pandemic. I mean, everything seems like an Onion article headline. I was watching a show the other day. I was watching Broad City, one of my favorite shows, and one of the characters, Abby, was looking at her phone and laughing. She's like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe this Onion article. And it was it was filmed in 2016. And Alana, the other character, was like, that's the New York Times. Because that's where we are right now. So yeah, essentially then, some of these races become really, really important because it is about making the decision. I don't know if anybody watched the debate that was on last night on Arizona Horizon with Julie Gunnigal and Rachel Mitchell, but what is it called? Prosecutorial discretion is an important factor. So what do you see? Like, okay, where did you do most of you're talking specifically about Arizona for your reporting now. So what kind of races are there? Other races besides the Maricopa County Attorney's race and the State Attorney General's race that we should focus on? Are there counties where they could, possibly get somebody in there who would use that discretion to, not charge those cases?
Yeah, well, definitely the biggest ones are like you mentioned, the Maricopa County Attorney's race, which is the only county attorney race in the state this year because it's a special election. And the Attorney General's race and the governor's race also, it's kind of all, as you could expect, the candidates are falling along party lines. You have the Republican candidates who are very, very against abortion, and the Democratic candidates who say that they will protect abortion, though I'm not sure really how much power. I don't particularly cover the governor's office very often, so I'm not sure how much power they would really have, especially with a Republican-controlled legislature, to do much about that. Though I know it does matter for the Attorney General's race and the Maricopa County Attorney's race, because a Republican attorney general with an ideological bend could kind of overstep say you have a county attorney who is choosing to use their prosecutorial discretion and doesn't want to criminalize abortions. A Republican ideological attorney general could kind of overstep that. I'm not sure how much he practically could do, but he could try to force those kinds of cases to be prosecuted. But yeah, definitely the biggest one is the Maricopa County Attorney's race. We have the incumbent Rachel Mitchell, who is a pro-life conservative, and then Julie Gunnigal, the Democratic challenger, who has said in no uncertain terms that she won't prosecute people for choosing to get an abortion, and she won't prosecute providers for getting an abortion. And the Maricopa County Attorney's Office is, I feel like, often overlooked, but nationally one of the biggest. I think it's the third or fourth largest prosecuting agency in the country. It's up there with Los Angeles and Cook County. I believe there's 7 million residents in Arizona, 4.5 million of them are in Maricopa County. So the stakes are huge, whether or not you're going to have someone in that office choosing to criminalize people. That's more than half of the state's population that office has control over.
So I'm curious, and by the way, folks, if anybody does have a question that they would like to ask of Meg, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A. I am curious if you, in your reporting, have spoken with many abortion providers and know kind of what they are feeling and thinking right now as they try to navigate through this whole, do we follow the 15-week abortion ban that was just signed into law, or do we follow this, pre-territorial ban? What do we do? So have you talked to abortion providers about this?
So in my reporting, I haven't talked to providers much, but there's been some really excellent reporting, both in the Arizona Agenda, which is a newsletter by a former Arizona Republic reporter. That's really great, where she talked to a bunch of providers and spent the day at one of the still operating abortion clinics. And some really good reporting in the Los Angeles Times about this too. But basically, when the Supreme Court overturned Roe, Arizona politicians moved quickly to create as much confusion as possible. What actually was the case in Arizona at the time, June 24th, I think, was when the decision came down, was that there's 3 laws that were in play that have caused a lot of confusion because people are purposefully causing confusion. But basically, there is the 15-week ban that was signed into law this year, but it does not go into effect until September 24th. because laws don't go into effect until I think 60 days after the session ends. So that will be September 24th that goes into effect. There is also the 1864 ban. That's the territorial ban. That is a total ban on all abortions. That is from before Arizona was a state. It is a Civil War era law, and that is not in effect. Though you did have people like Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, Arizona Senate Republicans, I think even Rachel Mitchell, claiming that it was not in effect. It has not been in effect this whole time. It is enjoined because of this lawsuit from the 1970s that basically it's in Pima County, which is why we're waiting for a big decision out of Pima County. But like, to make it simple, the law is enjoined. It can't go into effect. It hasn't been in effect since 1973 when Roe came down. But because of all the messaging from the county attorney, or from the attorney general, from Senate Republicans saying that this abortion ban was in effect, it caused a lot of confusion for providers. The other law that was at play, that's kind of out of the picture for now, is a so-called fetal personhood law. It's a law, it's a provision that kind of got snuck into another abortion law that was passed last year, but it grants fetuses and embryos the rights of any person of Arizona, which is why it's called a fetal personhood law. But there was concern, and the ACLU took this to court about whether it was very, very vague, which is why that law isn't at play right now. But it was very vague, and the ACLU took it to court out of concern that the fetal personhood law could be used to criminalize providers and people who obtain abortions, because if a fetus has the same rights as a person, is getting an abortion murder. But yeah, a judge agreed that the law was very vague, too vague to enforce, and it is currently enjoined. So where that lands us is that the 15-week ban isn't in effect until September 24th. The total ban from 1864, we won't have a decision on until on or after September 19th. So it's currently enjoined, not at play, but could come back after September 19th, which is Monday. And then the fetal personhood law is enjoined. So at the time, this has all taken a while to get worked out in the courts. There's various injunctions at play with different laws. So when the decision did come down from the Supreme Court in June, the confusion did lead to many providers in Arizona to stop providing services. I think there was only one for a while that was operating still, but pretty much all, for a period of time, all of the state's abortion providers stopped providing services completely because they didn't know, the penalties in the anti-abortion laws are severe. They're felonies. Some include mandatory prison time. And you could lose your license as a provider. So many clinics weren't willing to put their providers at risk in that way. But as things have kind of become more clear over time with the intervention of the courts, many people have resumed providing services, including Planned Parenthood, at least in Tucson. I'm not sure if elsewhere they have.
Yeah, I don't know. I only heard that they, started abortion services back up again in Tucson. I know that there was, we had a speaker as part of our secular. They were panelists for our secular summit last year, Dr. Deshaun Taylor with Desert Star Family Planning, and I remember early on, as we were getting closer after the leak, and everybody was just kind of bracing themselves and trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? What can't we do? Because everything, like you said, was so vague. She made the decision because she certainly didn't want to lose her license and her practice, and be thrown in jail, to provide those services. And then, in talking with her a little bit more, she brought up something that I think that we all need to consider is the potential for brain drain from our medical schools in Arizona. The fact that if it's illegal in Arizona for people to provide abortion services, then people are going to choose a different medical school. They might end up in California or somewhere in the Pacific Northwest where they know. And additionally, what she brought up was that, that's going, because it's illegal, we can't even train our med students to provide that oftentimes life-saving procedure for people who need it. And there's just going to be this void of information for, and again, it increases the likelihood of maternal deaths, and we're in a country, first world country, that has some of the worst outcomes for mothers and babies, when it comes to maternal outcomes and perinatal outcomes. It's just astounding to me. We're also a state that, we discriminate against who can be a foster and adoptive parent based on religion in Arizona. By, the passing of SB 1399 made it so that adoption and foster agencies can discriminate. We also have some of the highest child poverty rates in Arizona, in the entire United States, and some of the most, the largest amount of children living in foster care. So it doesn't seem to me that it's about the preservation of life. What's your take on that?
I mean, I personally, I don't think it's about preserving life at all. I mean, what was it after, I think it was in the weekend after the Supreme Court decision came down, Donald Trump was appearing at some sort of rally, and the woman who was leading it misspoke and said, "This is a huge," misspoke. I think it's more of a Freudian slip, but she said, "This is a huge victory for white life." And I think that it's about just oppressing people and keeping people in. I mean, there's a great longitudinal study that has shown that followed women who were unable to obtain abortions over decades, and it showed that when you're not able to obtain an abortion, you're trapped in a cycle of poverty, because one of the reason many people get abortions is because they cannot afford to have a child. They cannot afford to take care of a kid. Being forced to have a child, you're just like stuck in this cycle. They're very expensive. I think it's just kind of a tool for oppressing people and keeping people trapped in cycles of poverty.
Well, it sure does seem like that, and especially, some of the other policies that are, the focus of leadership in the state of Arizona. It really does, just thinking about the school vouchers, right? And the expansion of school vouchers. This is really about, allowing people who already are millionaires and billionaires to access down payment from the taxpayers to be able to provide whatever they feel like they need to provide for their children. But forget about those, Title I school children who are living in neighborhoods that are experiencing generational poverty. It's, oh, well, figure it out. If your mom and dad don't have a car and you're not on a reliable bus route, but you want to access private education, go ahead. But I mean, we know that the practicalities of that for people who are living in poverty, that's not the case. So we do actually have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if you will be able to answer these, but you might. So this one is from Karen, and it says, so many organizations and campaigns are requesting donations. Where are the best places to donate to help this cause right now?
Just speaking personally, I think the best place to put your money is an abortion fund. To help abortion funds directly help people obtain abortions. I don't know if I'm very, as I'm sure many of us are, disillusioned with our political system. So I would support an abortion fund over anything else, but just stay engaged and pay attention to the politics that are happening that you can make a difference in, like the Maricopa County Attorney's race. But an abortion fund, when you think about it, the abortion alone can typically cost $300 to $500, and that's if you're still, fairly early. So say Arizona, say after September 19th, the judge rules that the 1864 ban is in place. That would mean that people who want an abortion in Arizona are going to have to travel out of state to get one. That automatically increases the cost of getting an abortion. probably, you know, upwards of $1,000 when you're thinking about the travel, the like gas is super expensive, or you'll need to get a flight, like the lodging, childcare, all of that. So even if you donated, you know, $1,000 to an abortion fund, that's probably not even one person getting an abortion. So they can really use the money right now.
And, you know, I heard too, I heard a story recently about this phenomenon of camping, right? You know, and some of these like social media groups, Facebook pages, et cetera, promoted this idea of let's go camping, and it's a code word. And I think the intention was, you know, was an altruistic intention for many people to say, well, you can couch surf, and you know, I will help you in whatever way I can. But what I heard on this piece, I think it was on NPR, was that, you know, there are people who are looking at these Facebook pages and could actually target people for utilizing, you know, there are people who are paying attention and would possibly turn people in. So the camping option isn't great. And the other thing about it is, you know, it kind of minimizes the experience of the person who has the abortion. Like, they should have the dignity to be able to access these services in the privacy of a hotel room. I mean, ideally, they would be able to do it in their own state and be able to go back home and recover in their own bed. But if that's not the case, this camping idea, not a great idea, even though, like I said, I think it was probably altruistic in nature. So, you know, if you hear people talking about that, the recommendation is to, you know, not support those kinds of endeavors. There is, I don't know if this is a question or a comment. Let's see. I heard about a pregnant woman who used like we joked about this in the very beginning. I heard about a pregnant woman who used a carpool lane. She's arguing her fetus qualifies as a passenger, and the state says no. But like, I almost feel like, because I remember in the beginning, Diane and I were kind of joking about that. Diane Post is our head of legal, and all the you know, you could drive in the carpool lane. You could, you know, start applying for child support or whatever. But the more that we give their arguments validity, I think the more it erodes our own argument that, like, no, this is a healthcare matter. It's a privacy issue, and it's a decision that should be made by an adult human being, or even a child human being, because that's what we're seeing now. Children who are not old enough to drive a car, have a drink, register to vote, are being forced to give birth. And so, like, I think that it was funny for a second, but I don't think that that we should give that any kind of validity. And then there have been a couple of articles posted, and those are the questions from the audience so far. So again, if you do have any questions for Meg, please go ahead and share them here. So what are some of the most worrisome stories that you are hearing about when it comes to, you know, policing and abortion?
Well, so far, I have just kind of been looking at instances in the past where, even with Roe in place, people were criminalized for their pregnancy outcomes. And so there have been several of those, and I'm trying to pull up one of them right now. Yeah. Several of those, I've been looking to these kind of instances in the past to try to get a better sense of where it's going in the future, and what people might plan to do, prosecutors and police. So yeah, there was one case recently, and last year, so in 2021, a 19-year-old woman from Oklahoma who miscarried at 17 weeks was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison. She had told hospital staff that she had recently used methamphetamine and marijuana, but the medical examiner stated that the fetus's congenital abnormalities and the fact that the placenta had detached from the uterus had also contributed to the miscarriage. So there's a woman right now serving 4 years in prison for a miscarriage. And I just, it's going to force a lot of people into really terrible. I've been unable to forget this line that I heard from a doctor. I think it was quoted in maybe the Arizona Republic, but just a doctor who was wondering, because one of the only exceptions for many of these abortion bans is to save the life of the mother, something that has doctors wondering how dead or near death a woman needs to be before they can intervene, which is just horrendous. This is going to result in situations where people have a fetus that they know isn't viable, that will never survive, and they have to go through the entire pregnancy with a dead child inside them. It's very traumatizing. And then like to get police involved with that when there's so many serious crimes with actual victims like rape and murder that the police are terrible at solving or investigating, to divert their resources to have them criminalize people for ending pregnancies is just wild.
We do have another question that Lindsay was kind enough to put a link in, but somebody asked, do we have any statistics on increased voter registration since Roe was overturned? That comes from Kathy, and Lindsay went ahead and put a New York Times article about voter registration since Dobbs. I've seen some of the numbers, and the numbers are going up in many categories. Republican women have registered to vote at an increased rate, Democratic women, independent women, young people. So there is a link right there. Let's see, there is another question that I just saw, and Diane Post actually put into the Q&A a link to an article about the argument in Tucson and the legislature on abortion. So you can access that in the chat as well. And we will put these comments and links onto Facebook as well. But Diane asks, why aren't doctors suing about the violation of their Hippocratic oath when they have to let women get very sick or die, and forced speech when they are to give inaccurate medical information? Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. That is a great question. I know there's a group of organized physicians. It's Physicians for Reproductive Health, who are being very forceful and saying things like, you don't have to report your patients to the police, like, and trying to give guidance to other physicians not to do things like this. But yeah, I mean, you have doctors even in Arizona right now forced to say things that absolutely aren't true, like that abortion increases the risk of some form of cancer, which just isn't true. Like, I cannot believe that you're able to legally get away with forcing people to say, medical professionals to say things that are untrue. So yeah, I don't know where kind of the organization and the power from this group of people are, but that would be something very impactful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, at what point do we let politicians, run, where does it stop? They've been trying to, my background's in education. And so they've been trying to kind of delegitimize the expertise of educators, right? And calling us all kinds of horrible things for the past few years. They're delegitimizing the expertise of medical professionals. At what point do we stop and say, well, wait a second, politician A, you don't have the medical expertise to make these kinds of decisions. And again, that's why we do the work that we do, because it very clearly is grounded in this, religious ideology that is archaic and prohibitive and restrictive in nature, and really does seem to be about power and control, and a dominant group making the decisions for everybody else. Let's see. So did I see another question here? Okay, no, I guess I didn't. So if there are any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But let's take a minute. You have a really impressive resume. Let's talk about some of the other work. I mean, is your entire focus right now about policing and the overturning of Roe, or are you working in policing in other areas as well?
So I have a couple of areas that I'm working on right now, and basically the background of myself and the appeal. The appeal is a national publication that focuses on the criminal legal system, and last year we unionized because we had bad working conditions, and when we unionized, our bosses tried to fire us which is not legal. Yeah, so what ended up happening was that we, the workers took over the company, we got the intellectual property, and all of that. So a lot of the past year for us has been working on relaunching as our own newsroom, our own nonprofit, securing our own funding, a lot of that. And part of that was me launching our weekly newsletter. So that's all to say that I haven't had as much time for reporting in the past year, though I've recently been able to get back to it. But yeah, a lot of my focus has been on, I no longer live in Arizona, but I lived there for 3 years, and it's has a very special place in my heart. I love Arizona, and it is very stressful to see what is happening there, not only with the abortion laws, but also the Maricopa County attorney's race. Which is this year the biggest prosecutor's race in the country. And so, yeah, I've been covering that a lot because I care about that a lot. And also a lot of my work recently has been on the NYPD's Special Victims Division, which is what the Law and Order SVU show is based on. But it is the, real life division tasked with investigating sex crimes and child abuse. So just done a lot of, it's the subject of, like the Phoenix Police Department, a Department of Justice investigation right now. So lots of trouble there. Also working on a few pieces about the Maricopa County Attorney's Office with the race coming up. But that's something for about a month from now.
Well, and I think actually just on this past weekend's last week tonight with John Oliver, they cited some of your work, I believe, with regards. So I never watched Law and Order. I am not like a big, yeah, right. I never watched Cops either. I remember watching NYPD Blue a while back, and The Wire. The Wire is probably my favorite because
The Wire is
it gives you like great perspectives as the politicians, the unions and the corrupt unions, right? The police force, all of that, the gangs. Great show. If you haven't watched it, The Wire is one of the best shows ever on television. But Law and Order, because I never watched it, and I watched the John Oliver piece, and I was kind of blown away by the representation of police departments on this show and some of the things that they do on this show. And it's been on for 3 decades?
Yes, yeah, it's their Law and Order SVU in particular is their biggest. It's got something like 1,300 episodes. It's huge, and it's just absolutely insane. It was really funny. I'm glad he pointed out at one point that the fictional detective on the show, Elliot Stabler, has a 97% clearance rate. For clearance is a measure that police departments use to measure how many cases close in arrest or exceptional means. But the NYPD's real clearance rate is something between 6 and 31%. And actually, Phoenix is even worse. Police departments are required to report their clearance statistics to the FBI every year, and Phoenix is 10%, which is one of the worst in the country. So very not good.
It's yeah, that was a really eye-opening piece, and I went ahead and put that on our Facebook as well because it was very interesting. Again, I'm not somebody who watches that show, but seeing kind of how even fictionalized, it's just totally accepted that they're going to rough up a perp, right? And force a confession. They just say the quiet part out loud.
Brutality. Yeah.
It's a very strange time to be alive, that's for sure.
Yeah. And the part where he was showing the detectives in the show criticizing police reforms that they've made, like needing to, I don't know, give people rights. It was crazy.
I feel like we should all be paying closer attention to, and it was very controversial here in Arizona when Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona made the decision to have that as part of their endorsement process. And it is because they could kind of see the writing on the wall with regards to where we were going with Roe, with this current Supreme Court. They withheld Obama's nomination for 9 months or however long it was. And then Trump was able to push through 3 very clearly political. This is supposed to be a branch of government that is apolitical, right? It's supposed to just interpret the Constitution, but it's just become so partisan that it's downright dangerous. And even some of the other cases that are coming down the chute, you know, in the next session are really scary because there's a case, and I'm sure Diane probably knows it off the top of her head, but there's a case that's going to be coming to the Supreme Court that would allow for state legislatures basically to overturn elections. So kind of to go back to the question, like, who do we support? What do we do? What campaigns should we get behind? Where should our donations go? Our state legislatures wield an awful lot of power, and we are seeing that left and right since this Supreme Court and since the overturning of Roe. And so, I mean, I guess I would say if preserving a person's ability to access abortion health care is important to you, then you might want to find a legislative candidate to support, a county attorney candidate to support. Lindsay also put down the link for abortion funds, so direct funds that go to people who are trying to access abortions in states where it's now illegal. And speaking of that, Meg, like, what do you see happening with regards to, because I believe there are some, especially southern states, who are they have it written into some of these laws too, where now you're not even allowed to travel across the state lines, or you could be interrogated. Are you hearing stories about anything like that?
So I think right now, people who are against abortion can see that there are two main workarounds to actually preventing people from getting abortions, which is to obtain the pills, the abortion pills online, which only work on up to 10 to 12 weeks. So that is an option for people, but only up till that time. But then the other workaround is to travel to another state. So that's definitely something that I think all anti-abortion politicians have their eye on. Whether they can do things like control the mail or control something that's happening in another state, I think is a constitutional question. Those are like federally regulated things. The federal government controls the mail. The thing is, if this had been like 10 years ago, maybe I would have said, oh, I don't think they can do that. But what is like reality anymore? Many things are meaningless since Trump was elected, I feel. And I would not put it past any politician to just keep trying to pass things at a state level, saying, if you say abortion becomes illegal in Arizona, I wouldn't put it past the legislature here to try to pass something saying like, oh, you can't travel to New Mexico to get an abortion. And anyone who travels will be criminalized, penalized in some way. And even if that, doesn't pass, is found unconstitutional, or not found unconstitutional, but, is taken up in another court to be litigated, their strategy is just to keep, they've stacked courts in their favor, and their strategy is just to keep bringing things to the court until the Supreme Court gives them the ruling they want, and then anything they want can be legal. So one strategy that states where abortion is legal is taking, like I've seen this happen in Nevada, and I think maybe California, is to just kind of supersede that by protecting people. But I am not sure. I know they will try anything. How successful they will be is to be seen.
Yeah, I feel like it's just anybody's guess right now. There's, again, collective trauma because of a pandemic, because of a, sexual predator is sitting in the Oval Office for 4 years. Just one bad headline after another, climate change, you name it, we're all going through it. And so the uncertainty is like killing me right now. And I'm sure it's killing a lot of people figuratively. So Diane also says that Biden issued an executive order that they cannot prevent travel for an abortion under Commerce Clause and a civil rights era Supreme Court case, Heart of Atlanta Motel. All the Supreme Court needs is 5 votes, not law, not precedent, not facts, not common sense. Boy, ain't that the truth, Diane. And then she also says, have to be very careful about phone use and computer searches, etc., Digital Frontier has tips to avoid. Oh, that's good. Yeah. I've heard about these, period tracking apps, right? And people being able to access those to try to, get somebody based on when their ovulation or their, cycles are. It's very Big Brother, very Orwellian.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what Diane just said. Yeah, that's I mean, exactly. Like, we talk to a lot of people who work in this space, whether they help people obtain abortions, or they help people who are criminalized for abortions and things like that. And one thing we heard over and over again was that many people will be thrust into the criminal legal system by their provider or someone that they tell. Because if say you're in Texas, you can get, it's not legal, but you can get an abortion pill up to 10 weeks. That stuff is available over the counter in Mexico. It's used for treating ulcers as well. Or you can, there's an organization called Aid Access, which was started by a Dutch physician that works, I think, out of the Netherlands, and does a video visit, telemedicine with you, and you can get an abortion pill, the abortion pills that way. So they'll send it to you. But say what they're expecting to see is, say someone doesn't know, like, should I be bleeding this much? Is this normal? And they go and they see a healthcare provider. Like, that provider may be the one to report them to the police. You saw that in Texas with Lizelle Herrera, who was charged briefly with murder for this last year. And yeah, I mean, once you get to that point where you are involved in the criminal legal system, what prosecutors and police will do is subpoena your Facebook searches, subpoena your Google searches. And if they find you searching for things like how to induce an abortion, or you talk to somebody digitally about that you need to get an abortion, they will do their best to find that stuff. And like Diane said, yeah, Facebook does turn over these records, unfortunately. So yeah, there's a lot of good in the EFF link that Lindsay shared, and in this link I'll share right now, there's a lot of good tips on how to protect your digital security for this. There's encrypted messaging apps like Signal. It's a text app, basically, that they won't turn over your messages. So there's a lot of ways to stay safe.
And then Diane also points out that Jane collectives are starting up across the country to do self-help, so no need to go to any medical institution or person for fear of referral or criminal prosecution. I actually I listened to a lot of NPR apparently, because I heard a piece about that as well, and the origins of the Jane collective. So they are starting up new chapters all over the country to assist people who need abortion health care. Oh, great. Thanks for that, Meg. I see that you put your link up there as well. So how can people support the work that you do at the Appeal? I love this idea of the fact that you have ownership of your your journalist organization. That's great. So how can people support your work?
Yeah, it's really wonderful to be your own bosses. You create very good working conditions when you're in charge. So thanks for asking that. We're a worker-led organization. It's just the 8 of us running it right now. We have been amazingly successful so far in this first year of relaunching. Our work has been, we publish a lot of like incarcerated writers and things like that. We do a lot about the criminal legal system, and our work has been nominated for 2 significant awards already this year. So we're very thankful for the support of our readers that we've had, that has helped us get this far, that helped us to kind of take over the organization in the first place, because there was a massive outcry by our readers online when they learned that our bosses were trying to fire us. So yeah, any contribution that you can make, even if it's just, a one-time donation of like the price of a cup of coffee, would be really helpful. You could also become a sustaining monthly donor if you wanted to, sign up for our newsletter. Stuff like that is all super helpful.
Great. I love the idea of a worker-led organization and the fact that you're also not really beholden to anybody to tell you what your lead needs to be or what you should be
Mhm.
reporting on. Like you get to decide for the people. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
So Lindsay did go ahead and put the link in there. I highly recommend that you all support the work that the appeal does and that Meg does. I want to say thank you again for joining us today. We're going to finish up a little bit early today. And I hope that everybody has a great weekend. Thank you so much, Meg.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
All right. See you later, everybody. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.